Let's face it, we're all looking for the most effective ways of getting users through our multi-step forms and turning them into real leads. One of the major factors in doing that, though, is indeed the design of your forms. I mean, what is the user experience, or UX, actually like? The reality is, many of us don't really know where to start when it comes to designing a user-friendly multi-step form. Often, and I include myself in this, you're so focused on the project at hand that you can't see the wood for the trees. What you need is to step back, step away, and take some independent advice from someone without a stake in the game. And that is where this video comes in. Over the next few minutes, I'll reveal the UX best practices for multi-step form design gleaned from years of experience in conversion rate optimization, paid marketing, and form design. These insights can help to transform your form into an engaging, user-friendly experience that not only looks great, but also performs exceptionally well. My name's Colin if you're meeting me for the very first time, and let's dive in. When you build a multi-step form, throwing questions at the wall willy-nilly and seeing what sticks is bound to fall short. You need to ask the right questions in the right order to create a high-converting form. So for example, you should always start your form on a question that is low friction and low commitment, non-personal, non-controversial, non-intimidating, and positive, or at least designed to get some sort of yes response. Ideally, you should be able to provide clear justification for asking the question and tie it back to a benefit the user will gain in exchange for providing that information. This follows the principle of quid pro quo, and it's why you often see headlines like "Get your free quotes," "Download your PDF guide" on landing pages and forms. More on that later. So what does this question order look like in your form? Well, for example, if you're an event planner, ask what kind of event the user is having. Like this. If you're a personal trainer, ask what the user wishes to achieve from their sessions. As the form progresses, you can ask for more information using single button clicks, which will have little to no impact on your conversion rate. Here's a great example from a solar business of doing just that. And then at the end of the form, you can ask those higher perceived risk questions involving more personal data like email addresses or contact information. And of course, there are dozens of examples that you can test out for yourself from Growform's extensive template library. Now, conventional wisdom holds that the shorter the form, the more conversions you'll generate. But as with so much conventional wisdom, it's questionable whether or not that's actually true. A landmark study from HubSpot discovered there's actually a relatively shallow decline in conversion rates when more fields are added to forms. What's more, forms with 2 to 5 fields convert better than those with just a single field. And in another study, Unbounce found that reducing the number of form fields led to a 14% drop in conversions. So forms with multiple fields can actually convert better than their single field alternatives. Not only that, but adding more fields helps you capture more detailed information, which improves lead quality. So what's the balance? What's the right number of fields to have in a multi-step form? Simply put, if you don't absolutely need to capture a certain piece of information about your leads, don't ask for it. For instance, if you only follow up with leads via email, don't ask for their phone number as well. The takeaway here is to start with relatively few fields. We'd recommend about 5 or 6 and usually no more than 10, and then test your way into incorporating more fields as you need them. Right, what does this mean? Well, it's simply the act of providing real-time feedback as users complete fields to help significantly reduce errors and make the form filling process easier. This approach helps your users quickly identify and fix their mistakes with things like email addresses or phone numbers, ensuring a smoother and more efficient experience. When an error occurs, displaying a clear and specific error message or symbol that highlights the issue and guides the user towards the correct solution. Of course, Growform provides this service itself, highlighting and verifying that an email address is correct before the user can move on. It does the same with phone numbers too. Our advice here is to avoid validating fields too early, such as when a user is still typing, to prevent frustration. Ideally, validation should occur once the user has completed the field or when they attempt to move to the next one. With multi-step forms, the temptation can be to wait until the end to validate all fields. This is a recipe for disaster. By saving all validation to the end, you'll be guaranteed to frustrate users and lose many in the navigation between the steps. Alright, time to get nerdy, my favourite. There is some science behind this one, which is well worth summarising, so you understand exactly what this point is all about. The design principle we're referring to here is proximity, one of the key principles of Gestalt psychology in design. Proximity suggests that objects or elements placed close to each other are perceived as a group and assumed to be related. This principle is essential in UX design because it helps users intuitively understand that grouped elements have a functional or contextual connection. In multi-step forms, applying proximity can guide users by grouping related fields like name, contacts, making the form feel more organized and easier to navigate. This principle works with other Gestalt principles like similarity and common region to enhance the overall user experience and clarity of the form layout. If your brain is still mush, here's an example from a multi-step form about the solar industry. As you can see, I don't know use an average is close to the previous question, which tells the user that they're closely related. You can do the same. Funnily enough, the average internet user has little desire spending their time filling in forms. So if you're going to convince them to hand over their information and take up their precious time, you need to point them in the right direction with a clear, compelling call to action, or CTA. When it comes to using CTAs in multi-step form design, there are enough recommendations and best practices to fill an hour-long YouTube tutorial, so this advice is far from exhaustive. As a general rule, you should keep your CTAs concise, personalize them to individual users or segments where possible, and use action verbs like explore, shop, learn. As a final point, make sure your buttons actually look like buttons for that call to action. They need to stand out and look clickable or tappable, as demonstrated here by Go Squared. The choice of word you use for the CTA is crucial as well. Here's a rule of thumb: if your form's call to action is submit, or it's not entirely clear what the benefit is to the user, then you need to work on that urgently. Although a bad value proposition or CTA can kill your conversion rate, the good news is it's a very easy one to fix. A few examples of a call to action you can trade for a user's contact details, for example, would include: send me pricing, get your free report, claim your complimentary guide. A lot of what I've shared in this point comes from CRO, or conversion rate optimization. If you want a crash course on that, it should be around about here. There's a time and a place for multiple columns, and sometimes they can work well. What I'm getting at here is when you're building a lead capture form, single columns are definitely the way to go because they're much easier for users to understand and eventually complete. UX research experts at the Baymard Institute found that multi-column form layouts are prone to misinterpretation, often resulting in two common errors: missing fields, either because the user didn't understand the meaning of the multiple columns or because they simply overlooked them, and completing unrelated or incorrect fields because they believed those steps were required. And here's a great, or maybe terrible, example from Walmart to demonstrate the risk with confusing columns. And as this diagram shows, the reason that loses users is because we all interpret columns differently. So what's the advice here? Well, if you use columns well, they can be good for design. For example, if I'm creating two text fields in Growform here for a first name and a last name, set their width to 50%, they appear next to each other, demonstrating clearly to the user where they need to go and what they need to fill in. Columns done well. Progress bars are one of the most understated and underrated components when it comes to best practices for multi-step form design, a potent weapon in your armory when it comes to driving form completions. This is to do with psychology. When we see a progress bar, we feel reassured that this whole process isn't going to eat up too much of our time. We know how long we have left. And as we complete each section, we get a tiny dopamine hit as we move one step closer to completion. It's the same reason why we like Uber, because we can see how far away the taxi is, rather than the olden days when who knows when the taxi was going to appear. It's the same idea. So what should your progress bar look like? Well, Growform's customizable progress bars are a great place to start, showing the user exactly how far they've progressed, how much longer they still have to go, and that encourages them to finish what they started. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of this video. 7 tips for best practices when it comes to multi-step form design. If you've enjoyed this video, please click like and subscribe, or tap if you're watching this on your phone. Every single one of those makes a difference to this channel. And if you've got any questions, anything you would like answers to, put it in the comments and it will either form a future video or one of the team will get back to you. Have fun out there. I look forward to seeing those multi-step forms with all of those best practice tips as the foundation of those forms, and I will see you again very soon. Bye bye.